Subscribe to EchoTales for deeply emotional, romantic, and mature stories that echo through your heart. Don't forget to like, share, and comment to support meaningful storytelling. It started like any ordinary Thursday, the kind Mira barely noticed anymore. The sleepy little coastal town had long settled into its nightly hush as she turned the key to lock up her cafe. Seabrew, a place that once buzzed with laughter, jazz music, and the warmth of shared dreams. Tonight, though, the silence felt heavier. The kind of silence that wraps around you when something you love has slowly started to drift away. Mira tucked a loose strand of hair behind her ear and glanced at her phone. A single message blinked at the top of her screen. Liam. Her thumb paused above it, but she didn't open it. It's probably just another, "Hope your day was good," or "Don't work too late." The messages had grown colder over the past few months, quieter, like two people standing across a widening river, waving instead of reaching. She slipped the phone into her coat pocket and walked toward home, thinking about how love sometimes fades, not with loud heartbreaks, but with small silences. But once upon a time, Liam hadn't been a stranger to her. No. He had once been the boy who'd walked into her cafe during a rainstorm, soaked to the bone, clutching a manuscript in one hand and looking like the world had forgotten him. She still remembered the way he smiled when she handed him a hot cup of coffee without asking for payment. "You looked like you needed warmth more than money," she'd said. That moment sparked everything: the long conversations over closing time, the sleepy goodnights, the slow fall into something real. They were both gentle souls, carrying bruises they rarely talked about. He had his writing, she had her coffee, shop. And for a while, they made it work. But love, Mira had learned, doesn't always shout when it's in trouble. Sometimes it just slips away, unnoticed. She didn't mean to push him away. It started with little things. Canceling a date because of a delivery delay, replying late to his texts, hesitating every time he asked about her past. She kept her guard up, not because she didn't care, but because she cared too much. And now, maybe it was too late. The next morning shattered what little calm she had left. Her friend Rosa rushed into the cafe before the morning rush and blurted out, "Liam's gone." Mira blinked. Gone? Left town. Didn't say goodbye to anyone, just left. Her breath caught. She pulled out her phone with shaking hands. The message was still there, unread. A small mistake. So small. But it hung in her chest like an anchor. That unread message wasn't just a missed text. It was a turning point, a final door she hadn't opened. Mira stared at it as customers came and went that day. Her heart pounded with a strange ache, a tightness that whispered, what if that message mattered? What if it was the last thing he ever said to you? The cafe felt colder, even with the ovens on. Her world suddenly felt less vibrant, less alive. It wasn't just that Liam had left. It was that he had waited for her to fight for him. And she hadn't. She had made a small choice, a careless one. But now, it was too late to undo. Or so, she thought, because sometimes the heart doesn't break with a bang. It shatters quietly when you realize the moment you ignored was the one that could have changed everything. The message waited, untouched, like a love letter sealed in glass. Mira couldn't stop thinking about it. All day, it buzzed quietly in the back of her mind, pulling at her like a thread she didn't have the courage to tug. She ran her cafe as if everything were fine, smiling at regulars, serving warm pastries, brewing lattes with hearts drawn, in foam. But inside, something was unraveling. She had spent the last few days pretending Liam's departure didn't sting, but the silence he left behind echoed louder than any goodbye. And the message, his message, remained unopened. Until that night. With trembling fingers and a chest full of quiet panic, Mira finally tapped it open. Her heart skipped as her eyes scanned the words. Each sentence soft but heavy, like the final pages of a book you never wanted to end. I don't know if I should still try, but I'll be leaving in the morning. Not because I want to, but because I feel like I'm holding on to someone who already let go. If I'm wrong, come find me. If not, I'll understand. Mira sat frozen, staring at her phone, the words replaying in her mind over and over again like a song she couldn't shut off. Liam hadn't stopped caring. He hadn't given up on her without a fight. He had waited for a sign, a response, anything. And she had left him unread. That wasn't just a message. It was a door, and she hadn't walked through it. Her chest ached with the weight of regret. Why hadn't she just replied? Why had she assumed he'd always be there, always waiting for her to catch up? She had loved him, but her silence had spoken louder than her heart. That night, memories of him filled the quiet of her apartment, the way he used to hum under his breath while writing, how he'd bring her wildflowers from the cliffside, how he once whispered, "You scare me, Mira, because I think I could love you forever." And she'd laughed it off, because forever scared her too. She was afraid to be known, to be fully seen. And Liam? He saw her. Every quiet fear, every guarded wall. And he stayed, until he couldn't anymore. As the hours passed, sleep never came. She walked around her apartment in a daze, her heart chasing shadows of what she had lost. Outside, the sky slowly began to pale into morning. She stood by the window, phone still in her hand, and whispered, "I didn't want you to leave." But it was too late, wasn't it? He was gone. No forwarding number, no address, just gone, like a chapter she forgot to read. But even as hopelessness crept in, something else stirred inside her. A quiet flutter. The message hadn't ended with anger. It ended with a choice. If I'm wrong, come find me. That meant there was still a chance. Fragile, yes, but real. Mira clutched her phone to her chest and closed her eyes. She had made a mistake, a small one that felt impossibly big. But maybe, just maybe, not all doors stayed closed forever. Maybe there was still a way to make it right. Because love, real love, wasn't about never messing up. It was about showing up finally, when it mattered most. And in that moment, Mira knew one thing with painful clarity. She had to find him. Not just because she missed him, but because she was ready to stop hiding. Ready to tell the truth. Ready to love him the way he had always deserved. She had let him go once through silence. She wouldn't let that silence be the end of their story. The letter came unexpectedly, like a whisper from the past wrapped inside a quiet miracle. It wasn't in an envelope or sent through the post. It was tucked between the pages of a returned library book someone left at Mira's cafe. It was Liam's favorite novel, The Winter Between Us, worn at the corners like it had traveled far. Curiosity pulled her to open it, though her hands shook with the weight of hope she didn't dare name. Inside, scribbled on the back page in Liam's unmistakable handwriting, were the words, "Somewhere between goodbye and maybe, I waited for you." Mira's breath caught. Her fingers clutched the book as if it were sacred. It was him. His voice, his poetry, still echoing, still reaching. And in that moment, something shifted inside her. The message he had sent her days ago had left her aching, drowning in regret. But this was a lifeline. It was as if Liam had left a trail, not to punish her for being late, but to give her a chance to be brave. She didn't wait. That same evening, she closed the cafe early and packed a small bag. The town had always felt safe, but it had become a cage of routine, filled with reminders of what she had lost. She needed to follow whatever this was, this paper trail of memories, these breadcrumbs of love. The next clue came in the form of a coffee receipt left folded inside another book from the cafe's forgotten shelf. 2 towns over. She drove through fog and winding roads with nothing but instinct and longing guiding her. The sun dipped below the hills as she arrived at a quiet roadside diner. Inside, the waitress nodded when Mira showed her Liam's picture. "He was here," she said, smiling gently. "Looked like a man who couldn't stop looking at the door." The words hit Mira hard. He had been waiting, even here, in places she'd never known to look. In a dusty secondhand bookstore, she found a napkin tucked between 2 novels, Liam's, handwriting again. "If you're reading this, it means you're not giving up. Neither am I." Her heart ached in the best and worst way. She remembered the way he used to write notes to her on cafe receipts, little lines of poetry, promises to stay even when things got hard. And now, it was her turn. Her turn to stay, to chase, to believe. With every mile, she shed another layer of fear. The girl who had been too afraid to be loved was gone. In her place was a woman searching, not just for Liam, but for the courage to tell him everything she had never said. That she had always loved him, that she had only pushed him away because she was afraid he'd see all the broken pieces. But Liam had never needed her to be perfect. He had just needed her to be real. As she followed his trail, notes, receipts, the echo of their memories, she began to see their story not as something broken, but something paused, waiting to be continued. The journey wasn't just romantic, it was transformative. Each clue wasn't just about finding him, it was about finding herself, too. Mira no longer felt like a woman who had lost love. She was a woman reclaiming it. Piece by piece, mile by mile, she was writing the next chapter, one where she didn't run from love, but walked straight into it, no matter how far it led. And deep down, she believed. If the heart leaves a trail, the one meant for you will always follow. And she was following his. With every beat, with every breath, she was getting closer. It happened just when Mira began to wonder if she'd always be chasing a memory. She had followed every quiet trace Liam left behind. Bookstore napkins, diner receipts, handwritten notes folded into old novels like love pressed between pages. And still, she hadn't seen him. Until one evening, in a small mountain town kissed by the soft orange blush of sunset, she wandered into a bar, led there only by the lingering rhythm of hope. The moment she stepped inside, her heart stumbled. A familiar tune drifted through the speakers, a melody Liam used to hum when he couldn't find the words. It was a song he once wrote but never played for anyone, not even her. Yet here it was, wrapped in the air like a secret finally let go. She asked the bartender with a trembling voice, "Do you know who played this?" He nodded, polishing a glass. "Quiet guy. Played it live last week. Seemed like he was waiting on someone." Mira's breath caught. He had been there. Not just passing through. Waiting. Her feet carried her outside before her mind caught up. And then, across the quiet street, standing just beyond the shadow of a tree-lined path, was Liam. His hands were deep in his coat pockets, head tilted toward the golden horizon. He looked like he belonged to the wind and the fading light, peaceful but distant. Then his eyes turned and found hers. Time didn't stop. It softened. It stretched. It paused long enough for their hearts to remember everything words had failed to say. Mira stepped forward, her eyes stinging with everything she had carried: regret, longing, love. "Liam," she whispered, like his name was a prayer. He blinked, and for a moment, the weight of leaving, of waiting, of wondering, poured from his gaze. So, his voice broke slightly. You read the message. She nodded, fighting tears. I did, and I hated myself for not reading it sooner. He looked down, then back up, voice gentler than before. I wasn't sure if you'd come. Mira stepped closer, her voice trembling but certain. I almost didn't. Not because I didn't love you, but because I didn't know if I deserved to still find you. The air between them shimmered with unspoken things. She reached for his hand, slowly, like she was reaching for a second chance wrapped in skin and heartbeat. He didn't pull away. I never needed you to be perfect, he said softly. Just honest. She nodded, tears slipping freely now. I was scared, but I'm not anymore. I don't want to waste another day wondering what if. I'm here. I'm ready. If you still are. He didn't kiss her, not right away. Instead, he leaned in, gently rested his forehead against hers, and closed his eyes like someone finally letting go of the ache he had carried far too long. And in that stillness, with their hearts pressed close, everything changed. Not in a dramatic, sweeping way, but in the soft, soul-deep way that matters most. The kind of change that comes when two people who almost lost each other choose to begin again. Around them, the world kept turning. The wind whispered through the trees, the town lights blinked on, a dog barked somewhere in the distance. But for Mira and Liam, the moment belonged only to them. Not the past, not the mistakes. Just this. Two hearts meeting again, not by accident, but by choice. And as they stood there, the first stars appearing above them, Mira smiled through her tears. This time, there would be no unread messages, no unfinished love stories, just them, writing, a new chapter together, one heartbeat at a time.